Assalomu alaykum hurmatli talabalar. Bugun sizlar bilan O'zbekiston Milliy universiteti Xorijiy filologiya fakulteti lingvistika ingliz tili magistratura yo'nalishi 2-bosqich magistranti Sanokulova N.Sh. Boshlang'ich sinflarda chet tillarini o'qitish metodikasi fanidan ma'ruzamni boshlayman. Bugungi ma'ruzamizning mavzusi ingliz tili darslarida ertaklarning qo'llanilishi. Keling, mavzuni ingliz tilida davom ettirsam. So, dear student, today we will discuss with you on topic using fairy tales in English lessons on subject methodology of teaching English language in primary classes. And I am Sanokulova N.Sh. So, these are the outlines of our today's lecture. So, today we will discuss with you fairy tales in teaching English as a foreign language. The aim to use the fairy tales as tools in English classes. 5 hot tips when use a fairy tale in class. Post-reading activity for practice. So let's define what's the fairy tale itself. A fairy tale is a type of short story that typically features European folklore fantasy, characterized such as trolls, elves, fairies, giants, gnomes, goblins, mermaids, trolls, or witches, and usually magic and enchantments. So fairy tales have a great potential to be used as a valuable source in English lesson. So fairy tales are also a great source of vocabulary, grammar, structures, and syntax. In addition to that, fairy tales are short enough to keep student interest long enough to get to the happy end. So when the teacher uses fairy tales in their English classes, they should remember about the aims of fairy tale. The first one, fairy tales provide a great opportunity for children to listen to a familiar story in English in an imaginative context. The teacher should choose one which children already knows in their own language and use it in simple version. So teachers should involve the children in the storytelling by getting them to join with repetitive words or phrase. For example, what big eyes you have. And finally, teachers should use a mask or finger puppets to bring the story to life. So here is a given the extra aims to use the fairy tales as a tools in English classes. Teachers should introduce various vocabulary sets such as family, food, clothes, and part of the body. And teachers should help all the primary school children notice language areas such as past simple, comparative, and etc. So while the teacher uses fairy tales in their classes, it demands on some materials such as fairy tale, storybook, worksheet for post-reading activity, flashcard, laminated photocopies of selected scans from the story. So as I mentioned above, one of the outlines of today's lecture is about 5 hot tips when the teacher uses a fairy tale in their classes. So teachers should create a mystical atmosphere which their body language, voice, and lighting if possible. They don't overdo the scannery characters with very young learners because it will be harmful for their behaviors. And they involve the children as much as possible, get them to guess what next episode throughout the story. In this case, teacher can easily catch their attraction. You don't need to systematically pre-reading vocabulary arouse their interest. Yes, with the pictures on the front of the cover, who is this kind of questions. It depends on you. So they don't use it just as a time filler. The children will get much more out of it if done over a series of lessons or it is a ties with a large topic. So after watching, listening, or reading fairy tales, they can do some post-reading activities, such as, for instance, draw a picture of their favorite characters, act out a scan from the story, rewrite the end of the story, make up a group or class fairy tale, use different characters from the several fairy tales, point to the flashcard of scan from the story to identify the character or event, and gradually uncover the flashcards from the story. The children have to say what they see. So sometimes to remember about the fairy tales is they are very long story and they don't always have the repetitive language that is almost essential for teaching English to young learners. The key here is to spend a little time simplifying the story next and making it a series or of repetitive pattern of language. Now we move on our practical area. So now we will watch with you the fairy tale about the Little Riding Hood, and we will try to simplify the story text and to make some kind of outcomes.
Little Red Riding Hood lived in a wood with her mother. One day, Little Red Riding Hood went to see her granny. She had a nice cake in her basket. On her way, Little Red Riding Hood met a wolf.
"Hello,"
said the wolf.
"where are you going?"
I'm going to see my grandmother. She lives in a house behind those trees."
The wolf ran to Granny's house and ate Granny up. He got into Granny's bed. A little later, Little Red Riding Hood reached the house. She looked at the wolf.
"Granny, what big eyes you have!"
"All the better to see you with,"
said the wolf.
"Granny, what big ears you have!"
"All the better to hear you with,"
said the wolf.
"Granny, what a big nose you have!"
"All the better to smell you with,"
said the wolf.
"Granny, what big teeth you have!"
"All the better to eat you with,"
shouted the wolf. A woodcutter was in the wood. He heard a loud scream and ran to the house. The woodcutter hit the wolf over the head. The wolf opened his mouth wide and shouted,
"Oh!"
and Granny jumped out. The wolf ran away, and Little Red Riding Hood never saw the wolf again.
So thank you for watching, and now we will try to simplify the story text and make a review about what did they learn from the story about Little Red Riding Hood. They can easily learn vocabulary groups such as animals, for example, wolf, food, apples, cakes, landscape, trees, lakes, forests, senses, hear, see, touch, or part of the body, ears, eyes, nose, hand, and teeth. And you can see some kind of simple repetitive words such as what big eyes you have, or they help me to see you better. And from the fairy tale, they can easily learn how to use the phrase have got. For example, in sentence, what you have got in your basket, or I have got 2 apples. So now it's time to takeaway task. You should analyze the vocabulary group, sample repetitive text, possible language areas of fairy tale Cinderella, and we will discuss with you it in your next seminar classes. So here is a given some reference for you and you can use it for your seminar. So thank you for your attention. This is my email address and you can